Hello, everyone. Today, our special guest is Jeff Barker. Jeff is an award-winning screenwriter and the father of Curry Barker, who is the writer-director of the smash hit horror movie Obsession. In this episode, we talk about the making of Obsession and how Jeff served as a script consultant for the film. We also go into the creative collaboration of father and son and the screenwriting lessons of working on the film, and how Jeff's own sons inspired him to become a screenwriter and filmmaker later in life. Enjoy. I've been following your podcast, Screenplay Lab, and your social media popping up, and then like out of nowhere, I'm like, I didn't put the two together, but Obsession comes out. I'm like, wait, Curry Barker, that's his son. So,
well, you're not the only one. There's so many people who've told me that story, that they've watched me for a while, and obviously, know about Curry and didn't put two and two together. I've been talking about it a lot, over the last couple of years, but it's usually at the end of the podcast, so, you have to stick all the way through it.
Right.
And then also there's been people who've told me, like, I've heard you talk about your son. And everybody's got a son who's making a movie. Like, it's no big deal. They didn't realize it was, this movie.
Now, you did help out with Obsession. We could talk about that a little bit in the beginning here. Number one, it's a phenomenal film. Like, story-wise, everything just absorbs you in. And I think there's an interesting factor here where we have this kind of new wave of filmmakers that are coming from like YouTube and things like that, and it's like a new force, if you will. Everything was pretty much go to film school and then you do this and you do that. Can you maybe touch base on that aspect? Like, we have this new wave of filmmakers where there's this new pathway and there's new pathways developing.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube is a free distribution company. They're making tons of money off advertising. So, but for the user, for now anyway, it's free. And so you have this platform that you could be as big as you're willing to work to be, as talented as you, as much talent as you put out, you're going to get that back in viewers. And, Curry, he always sort of cringes when he hears the word, YouTuber, because he doesn't define himself that way. He never has, even 8 years ago. He was always adamant. I mean, he wouldn't even shoot vertically until basically he just gave up that fight, because they were shooting everything horizontal, because he and Cooper, they were going to be filmmakers. They weren't going to play that game of trying to put out content. They wanted to put out, creative projects. But then they would have to go in and edit everything vertically over and over again. After a while, they just, unless it was shot as a short film or something, they just gave way to pretty much shooting vertically. But for years, they wouldn't do that. So they always considered themselves filmmakers first, and using YouTube more as a platform to put out quality content, where it was like quality over quantity. And a lot of their fans would get upset because they'd put out one video a week or every 2 weeks, where some people were posting 4 or 5 times a day, putting out significant video once a day. And they wouldn't do that. And it really slowed their growth. They would have videos that got 50, 60 million views, and then they'd have like 600,000 followers, where some people would, barely get 1 million views, but they'd have a million followers, So, but yeah, so that, Curry and Cooper both, took advantage of YouTube. And so they're very grateful to it. But yeah, I think another interesting component to that is just how the choices that Curry made as far as putting Milk and Cereal and The Chair on YouTube rather than going the festival route.
I love that, because that is, filmmaker first. And I want to kind of segue that into you. Like, kind of, I know you as an award-winning screenwriter, and you got some exciting things coming up I really want to talk about as well. But let's kind of your origin story. How did you get into screenwriting and things like that?
Yeah, well, through Curry, Curry's changed all of our lives. But I've been a writer for 25 years. I wrote, dozens of short stories that got published, novel manuscripts that, never got picked up, at least not yet. And so in our family, I was the writer. So Curry grew up around that. And when he was first working on Obsession, he asked me some questions about some things. And so I dove really deep into screenwriting and I loved it like right away. I mean, it's how I write cinematically, show, don't tell. And so it really fit my style of writing. And I just got obsessed about it, researching it, reading scripts. I get that way with things when I
Yeah.
really get into them, and Curry does too. And so I learned the best way for me to do it, to learn how to really write screenplays, was to really like read as many as possible. And that's when I started breaking screenplays down. But yeah, Curry asked me to look at some things, and that was about 3 years ago when he first started working on Obsession, and I really just went head over heels into it. And so much so, got into a position where I was able to quit my job and do this full time. And so that's been about 2 years that I've been doing that full time. And it's been great. I mean, it's a dream come true.
Do you have like writers that specifically inspire you? You read a lot of scripts, as you said.
Yeah, I love Greta Gerwig and Aaron Sorkin, parts of his stuff. And, Robert Eggers, of course,
Oh,
Ari Aster. I've got a long list. I hate to start naming names because I'm going to leave some out. But yeah, but my thing is, what I've learned from breaking down the scripts, on the screenplay, if you've noticed, I never say anything negative or critical ever. And it's because for there to be a screenplay that exists in the world that has resulted in a produced movie, I mean, that's a miracle for that to happen. So
yeah.
it's never my place to be critical. I just look at everything and find the interesting things in it to me, the things that we can learn from it, to see a different way of doing things. And you may not want to do it that way, but it may open up your mind to think of a different way to do something and unlock some of that stuff. And so there's something you can learn from every screenplay. And I have in the early days of the Screenplay Lab where no one was watching and I just kept going. It wasn't because I was trying to grow some sort of presence. It was because I learned right away that when I broke down a screenplay with that amount of effort and time and focus, it elevated my writing weekly. So I just kept going and just pretended that I had people watching.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Just keep going. It is
Yeah.
interesting, like even I have a music background, and one of the best ways to learn how to play like music is to read and practice with established
Okay.
songs, and then you start developing your own style or whatnot. And I feel like right with you, I hear this a lot too, is new into the filmmaking area. People start talking about subjects like, hey, did you find your own voice or style yet? And I feel like you're ever growing, but what is that process like for you, kind of finding your own, what you like, and the tone and pacing per subject matter you cover?
Yeah. It just takes hours and hours of doing it. And I think I was a little lucky in that way just because I already had a voice from all the other writing that I had done. And so it was easy to sort of transition into that. It was more about, for me, learning story structure, when you're doing it over 90 to 100 pages as opposed to 350 pages. And, being able to tell the story without interiority that you have with prose writing. So it was just learning all of that. But the written voice, I think, was, obviously has changed some since I've gone, mostly all screenwriting. But it was really there already. But for like a younger writer, an emerging writer who's new to writing, period, the only way to find your voice is to write and write and write and write. Curry says that if you want to be a filmmaker, go make a shitty movie, and then go make another shitty movie. And because what happens is you get paralyzed by a fear of putting something out and being judged and not being good. It's the same way with writing. Like you just got to write, and it's the good part is like earlier in your writing career, you'll think it's good, even though it's really
Right.
not. So at least you're not. And then, later on you'll look back and say, oh, that was really bad, but that's okay. It's a process. I'm sure 10 years from now, I'll look back at what I'm writing now and think that it wasn't as good as it could have been. So, but the thing is, like with filmmaking, with screenwriting and anything else in life, really, if you don't have that passion for it, if you don't love it, you'll just weed yourself out. Like the people who make it in this business and in other facets of life are really, it's a war of attrition. It's just sticking around and keep going. I look at writing as very blue collar. Like when I'm working on a project, I don't wait for inspiration or feel a certain way. I just know I'm going to write from, I'm going to put in 6 or 8 hours or whatever it is, and I'm clocking in. I'm going to do it. Doesn't mean I'm clicking keyboard 6 to 8 hours, but I'm working on that project in one way or another, for a set amount of time. It's just how I do it, and it's really worked for me.
And I think that's such an important point, because otherwise, if you're only looking for when you're inspired, and then
Yeah.
you have a deadline, it's like, hey, you got to be creative right now. It's like, no, you worked out the wrong muscle.
Yeah. I think inspiration is a joke. I don't think it's a real thing at all. I think flow is real, and there are pockets of time where it almost feels like the heavens have opened up, and it's like things are flowing through me that it's like a gift. And it's probably some combination of subconscious and maybe it is tapping into something. I don't know, but there are those moments, and they're like nice little gifts. But you can't sit around and wait for that, because it won't come. It won't come if you wait for it. You got to just get to work.
And I love that too, because I think I felt, I'm 45. I never knew this was like, I was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school. I ran that for years, and I was like, got to a point where I had a bad accident a couple years ago, and writing was on the wall. I can't be very physical like this anymore, which was crushing. And the next thing I know, it's something I always wanted to do. And I was just like, just make your first thing, write it out. And I did that, because otherwise I was at this, maybe that's another thing we can go into. Like, you get this blank screen and you're just kind of like, oh man, you're trying to solve all these problems at once. And I felt like, the first pass, just like fluid thinking, just don't if I'm overthinking, I feel like, you're restricting yourself. Save that for later drafts. I mean, could you back something like that up when people see that blank screen and it's like, I have no, what do I do here? Or I'm cutting my own strings here.
Yeah. Well, I try to avoid going at a screen without knowing what I'm going to write. So for me, I discover character on the page, like who they really are. Like, I have an idea who they are. I discover them during the writing process, how they respond to things, how they may react and think about certain things. And I let that be a surprise to me. But as far as story goes, I don't touch a single key until I know exactly what's going to happen. Like, I usually write a 30 something page outline where it's very detailed, and that is writing the story. So that way, when I sit down to actually, look at this, because when you got the screenplay software open and you're looking at that, you put your first scene header in, and you're like, okay, like, you don't want to, for me anyway, I don't want to be in there trying to think, okay, now what's going on here? I want to know, what's the purpose of this scene? Because every scene has to have a purpose, or it's got to go. What's the purpose of this scene? Who's trying to accomplish what? Who's trying to hide what? What's this person's want? What's this person's need? And how is it going to tie to the next scene, so that it earns its merit as well? So I have felt that in the past with writing, where it's like, it's not writer's block to me, but it's like, just sort of like okay, what am I gonna do here? So I try to avoid that.
I love that. Getting the outline, the stories, thought out there. It's almost like you get the beats and what serves the story, the purpose. And then when you do the actual script, right, it's kind of like, okay, I'm connecting these dots. And also some of the best ideas kind of come up. Like, I never would have thought of that until I did this process. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, because for me, when I write, like, I have no problem killing my darlings, like Stephen King says and stuff. But when I write something, just subconsciously, it exists. And so it is harder to change things when it exists in the world. When it's in bullet form outline, for me, I have no problem just moving it around, wiping it out completely, changing it. It gives me that freedom to make those changes. And also, I could see the story more clearly when it's in bullet point outline. I can easily search, Control F and find things quicker, like, as opposed to a whole script. Oh, yes. And so when I'm building the story, it's just easier for me that way. And it allows me to go back in and add things, take things away, find the B story. If there's a problem I need to fix, I can more easily fix it in the outline. But again, I allow myself freedom when I'm into the screenplay. It's the whole pantser versus plotter debate. So I guess I'm both, but the first line of business for me is always to plot. Curry and I wrote a screenplay that he wants to direct one day. Of course, he's busy for like the next 3 or 4 years.
He's a
So,
little busy, right?
but it's something we're both very excited about. And it was my first time to write a screenplay with someone like that from start to finish. And he and I had this idea that we really loved. We talked about it a lot, and we traded notes on it. And then when it was time to like begin to write the script, we were both writing two different versions of the movie. Like, the tone was off a little bit. The characters were almost like cousins of themselves. They were the same person, but it was a little different. So we finally figured out, okay, this isn't going to work. And we weren't in the same town. I was back here in Alabama and he was in LA. And so that was a barrier too. So we decided to just start over, and I went up to LA. We locked ourselves in a hotel room for like 3 or 4 days, put in lots of hours and banged out that outline. And then went back and started writing the script. And that was a really cool process for me to do that. So, he and Cooper, when they write stuff, because they're in the same room, it's like a game. It's like a fun thing. They actually put their big like 80-inch TV or whatever it is becomes the monitor, and they got their computer, their laptop like plugged into that, and so they can both see the screen very clearly at the same time. And one of them's typing while the other one's like giving ideas or dictating, and then they switch. And so yeah, it's a whole there's lots of ways to do it.
Man, it's like a band jam session.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you said before you've been writing pretty much your whole life. Not you're newer to screenplays and film, but
Right.
writing your whole life.
Yeah.
What kind of things were you into, like novelizations, things like that?
Well, mostly it's psychological horror. My background's in psychology. I was a psychiatric nurse practitioner for 9 years, and so that really forms who I am in a lot of ways. And so I look at things through character, through trauma and grief and pain, and people just working through their stuff. Especially with horror, it's a great vehicle for that, because the manifestation of the horror comes from the internal coming external, having to deal with these issues and stuff. Yeah, so I have a lot of short stories that are psychological horror. I also have some literary fiction stuff, and which for movies and television would be like just straight drama, and published in a lot of literary journals and anthologies. So yeah, I just has always been a part of who I am, for sure.
Amazing. And I do want to touch base on some of the things you've done, like Gravewater. There's a lot going on. It's an award-winning script. You guys, director kind of. This is going to be a thing.
Yeah.
So can you go into that, or maybe even anybody listening, a synopsis or a log line or something, and then kind of the involvement you have with that.
No, I don't think I can give much of it away now,
Oh.
since it's out on the town and stuff. But Kevin Gruder right now, he wants to direct it, and his team's putting it out. And I think there's been a little interest, but now with Obsession, I think people are taking another look. So hopefully we'll get that project going again. It's just a battle of attention in Hollywood. It's not a judgment of the quality of the project or the people. It's just like there's only so much time in the day, and it's like you have to find a way for your object to be shiny enough that people will look in that direction. I'm just so grateful and thankful that right now with Obsession, people are looking in my direction, and I know it won't last forever. So I'm just like really excited about it. I have other things going on with producers and projects that I'm just, again, it's just like really thankful for. And a lot of that's credit to Curry, because he, on his press tour, he's been very vocal about my involvement with Obsession and some of the writing. And because of that, people have like, oh, let's go see what this guy's all about. And also, like you said, because of that, there's a lot more eyeballs on my screenplay podcast. So, I've had producers and industry people reach out to me through that, because, they say, wow, I've never seen anybody break a screenplay down this way. It's interesting. Let's have a chat. And so, it's just really great.
And I've also seen just like, for example, with Obsession, I think, what was it, like a 20-day shoot or something of that nature? I
Yeah.
mean, the pacing on that, of course, they have a lot of reps going into it.
Well, it was his first time to direct like a real movie. I mean, Milk and Cereal was a real movie, but it was a found footage thing, and he was doing it on the weekends with his friends. Took him many many weekends to do it, and then all the shorts that he did, those were also films too, and that's where he really like cut his teeth in directing and acting. But with Obsession, this was the first time where what really happened was The Chair became this huge short that was just a lot of people knew about. The horror community really got behind it, loved it, and it grew. And so some producers saw it, and he took meetings. It was his first time getting like real serious industry heat, and he met with a production company who wanted to help, wanted to take The Chair and turn it into a feature. And he was certainly happy to do that, but he was just he had just become obsessed with this idea of obsession, and he was like, well, can I pitch you this idea? And then when he pitched it, James Harris was the producer, was like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that. And so, it wasn't like overnight because things start and
Right.
stop, start and stop. But eventually the project got greenlit, became a reality. The budget was what it was, which is really low. And that's the days. That's why it's 20 days, because you can only shoot so many days when you don't have that much money and on a shoestring budget. And so, ideally, I mean, depends on what type of movie you're shooting. If it's a huge studio movie, you may shoot 2 pages a day. But for an indie film, 3 or 4 pages a day, maybe five if it's just really dialogue heavy. But for this screenplay, it had to be 6 to 8 pages a day, every day, no matter what. Multiple locations, sometimes on one day, just because you had to get it in. But you had a bunch of young filmmakers, like the whole crew was really young, and I mean they were just hungry, and they all believed in Curry, and they knew what they were making was something great. No one imagined it'd be what it is now. I mean, no one could ever even fantasize about this sort of success, but everybody was just excited to be making it. And when Curry tells a funny story is that they were really like, because Curry doesn't pull any punches, like he wants to be authentic, grounded, but brutal. And he just kept waiting every day for an adult to show up and be like, no, you can't do that. You got to cut that. And it never happened. And that's why you have a session like it is,
That's a
and
good
then,
thing.
yeah. And the same thing with Anything But Ghosts. And there were adults involved in that one. But by that point, Curry had sort of earned his, let the kid cook, let him do what he's going to do. So that one also is, there's nobody ever said, can we tone this down? That's kind of too much. So it also is going to be pretty brutal.
I love that. You let the filmmaker make the film. There's a reason why things are at that point. That's amazing. Yeah, and I love he was obsessed with the idea of obsession.
Yeah.
Especially right. You go with your writing, right? You tend to go more towards that psychological thriller kind of side of things.
Hmm.
I tend to go that way too. I'm like, I'm going to do this. I want to do everything. I know you've done
Hmm.
written some comedies and dramas and
Hmm.
things too, but
Yeah.
you just whatever the idea that comes to the forefront of your mind, that's the one that seems okay. That's the one I should do. That's
Yeah. Yeah, I have a list of like, all screenwriters. I've got a list of like, 40, 50 ideas. Some are fully formed ideas, some are like just little nuggets of things, that I think are interesting, but I don't know what it is yet. But then there's always that one idea that you just can't shake, that you're just like, you can see it so fully in your mind,
yeah.
and you think about it when you wake up in the morning. For me, the magical hour is just like the time before I wake, when I wake up, before I have to get out of bed, right? Like, because now at my age, I just wake up like an hour before the alarm clock every day. But I'm thankful because that's when is a hypnagogic state where I'm like this half awake, half asleep, and my creativity, I always come away with something that's useful. Yeah. So when I get that idea that I just can't shake, I know, okay, that's the one. That's the one that's moved to the forefront, that's ready to go. And that's happened to me recently too. So that's always a fun process.
Yeah, I mean, it's telling you there's drive to that for some reason. I'm also excited here too because you got some on the other side of things. you're going to be part of the directing process for some films coming up. I know, just looking at your website, you got Good Tape, what's your film where you're in Alabama.
Yeah.
Medium Rare. There's some other stuff lining up here. Is there
Yeah.
anything like what's the first thing you're going to be hitting or in pre-production on or whatnot? And you can go into that.
Yeah. I'm on pre-production on both of them simultaneously. This is my chance to try to get a calling card and show that I can direct. Some of the producers I've talked to, I've let them know I'm interested in directing, but what screenwriter is it?
Right.
Like, okay, okay, writer boy, just you go write. We'll let the pros direct. But I'd like to have my shot one day, and that's never going to happen unless I can show what I can do and make my mistakes and make bad stuff. I'm not afraid to do that because Curry's taught me that. And that's what this first one is. Is good. It's called Good Tape, and we're shooting it here in Fairhope, and it's a guerrilla style crew. There's like 8 people. Riley, my son, who's a cinematographer, is going to come DP it, and he's bringing his posse down, and my other son's going to be here, Jeffrey, and we're just going to try to shoot it in 3 days. And my daughter and I are both acting in it. She's 7. So it's going to be really fun, and I'm not putting any pressure on it. And if it's no good, it'll never see the light of day. If it's decent at all, I'll probably throw it up there. But I don't know. But I feel like it's like I'm doing the same thing with her that I did with the boys when they were little, making films. But instead of like just using a little camcorder or a iPhone 3 or whatever, we've got more professional equipment and a real boom mic and all that stuff, and real editing equipment. So yeah, it's just a new step up, but it's still just trying to get in there and see what we can make. And so it's going to be fun for her. She's really excited. But the real one is Medium Rare, which I'm going back to Canada. I made some really good relationships with.
Is that Vancouver?
Yeah, made some good relationships with people from up there with Anything But Ghosts, and Glacier Bay Entertainment's the production company that's producing it. And we're gonna try to make it look really good. I think it's a good story. It's a good example of the type of things I like to write and I like to make. So I'm just gonna take my shot and see what happens. And also. Funny that my former manager, he was more of an actor's manager than literary. And one of the great things he did for me is he was like, you should act, which I was like, okay, if you think so. So I started, got set up, started doing auditions, and I've actually been cast in 2 movies that are going to shoot this year, which is insane.
That's amazing.
Yeah, for the first, in my late 40s, for the first time, it would be an actor in 2 movies, one shooting in Georgia, one shooting in Oregon. So it's like I couldn't be happier.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. There's different points in your life that hit different things. You do the family man thing for decades, and then all of a sudden, I feel too. I definitely, you've already stated this, like your kids, you learn from your kids in many ways too. You're inspired by them in many ways. When did you first see like Curry and Riley start developing that love for telling stories, making film, things like that? When did that kind of hit you? I think
that was about. Riley's 4 years younger than Curry, so for Curry it was probably about age 8. He like really got obsessed with movies and making things. And at first, I would write little scripts. In fact, I think it was maybe one of his birthday parties. I forget which one. Like some people want to go to the trampoline park or the skating rink. He wanted a movie party where all his friends would come over and they would make a movie. So I wrote like a little scripts for everybody. And I guess that's my first time to direct.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and we made like a really funny movie. So yeah, it goes way, way back. And then he and his brother, they started a YouTube channel called Popcorn Culture, where they would do skits, sketches, funny stuff, and put it up. And it was pretty popular. As far as kids' YouTube channels go, it had a pretty good following, especially locally. Like all their friends in school followed it. They were like little local celebrities. And so Curry just carried that to LA with him, and then they in fact, the first year they were there, they continued on the same channel, calling it Popcorn Culture. And then he and Cooper decided they were going to get, more professional, and they, started That's a Bad
That's
Idea.
a bad idea. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I remember, hearing Curry talk about that, and him and Cooper, because you almost like, again, like learning from that side of things, they were kind of, like go make a crappy movie. That's how you get better and make another one.
Mhm.
And next thing you know, you just, not only do you find like your own storytelling process and who you're inspired by, like, he was very heavily inspired by Key and Peele and things like that as well.
Mhm.
But I think, and as far as horror, like Hereditary, and start going that route. But I think
Yeah.
another interesting is, you start seeing what audiences react to. I think that's another factor, whether it's writing
Mhm.
or making film. Can you maybe go into that side of things? Like, it's almost like you write kind of like for yourself, but you're writing for an audience. Can you kind of talk about that relationship as far as storytelling / filmmaking and
Mhm.
the audience participation, if you will?
Yeah. Well, one of the things Curry and I have talked a lot about in the past is with writing is like to not spoon feed the audience. They want to discover things themselves and have some ownership in it. I mean, we call it, over exposition, but even if you disguise the exposition, but you're in it and it's not annoying that, but you're still feeding them everything, then they're not participating in the game, and people want to participate. And so Curry's really good about that. And in all of his shorts, he noticed right away that things that he was worried about people not catching on to, they would catch on to it, and they would even catch on to things that maybe he hadn't thought about, like, oh, that does make sense. And we're seeing that a lot with Obsession too, but this time it was very mindful. Like he purposefully had, like, I'm going to be ambiguous about this. It all makes sense. It's all grounded. It all makes sense, but we don't have to know why this is this way, or especially like the lure of the One Wish Willow and stuff. Like we could figure that out later if we go down that road with something else. But for this movie, it doesn't really matter. There's just this
Yeah.
device that does this thing. But yeah, it's even amazing to see all the theories and stuff online that people come up with, and some of them are like, yeah, I could see where you can make that connection. That's not really it, or maybe it is. I don't know. We don't have to say whether it is or not. And then some of them are pretty like, okay, no, that's not
It
it.
was like way
Like
out.
this this one girl, she was like adamant that Barrett murdered his cat on purpose to try to get sympathy from Nikki. And I don't know. I shouldn't even like got involved, but I told her that is a great theory that I've never heard that before. That is really interesting, and you should be proud that you came up with that. That's not true. And then she argued with me, told me I needed to go watch the movie again.
It's like, come on, I help
She didn't
consult
know
on
who
it.
I was. So that's fine. Maybe I should. I've only seen it like 40 times, but I'm happy to go see it again.
Jeff, let me ask you this, because I remember, like, specifically, I was maybe like, I don't know, 1.5, and my parents had Raiders of the Lost Ark on TV, and any
Wow.
TV they had on, you're just watching whatever, and the next thing I know, I
Mhm.
remember a specific moment where I think by the time they got to the Tibet scene where they're doing the shots
Yeah.
with Marion, and I'm like, from the stone ball to that, I'm like, this is captivating my imagination, not just
Mhm.
my attention. And I don't know how to label this being so young, but all I summed it up to is I'm watching and experiencing something special here. So, Jeff, let me ask you, do you have a moment or moments that like that when
Mhm.
your youthful age, something like that hit you, and then boom, you start
Mhm.
creating and your imagination starts going wild?
Yeah, well, I'm really lucky because my mother was a huge film buff, and I didn't even realize this till recently because sometimes things are part of your life, you don't see them till you step back and have some perspective. But growing up, we would go to the movie theater almost every weekend, and we would rent 3 to 4 movies every weekend, and we'd watch them all. And then I realized I don't not every family was doing that like that. I just thought that was totally normal. So I was exposed to so many things. I was talking to Curry about this the other day that like that really started this whole thing because that's what created the environment in his household was my love of cinema that I got from my mother. So, and she passed away when Curry was a senior in high school. It was really devastating for all of us. But yeah, I guess my earliest memory was watching Flash Gordon
Oh
in
yeah.
a theater in Beaumont, Texas, and it was one of these old theaters where they had the upper deck and the lower, like the mezzanine or whatever. And I remember that. That's like I must have been really young, but I was of the age where I got to see Empire Strikes Back in the theater.
Man.
Some of those movies that just like whoa. But I was an only child, and for whatever reason, I was super fascinated with Christopher Reeve's Superman.
Me
And
too.
I
Number
could
one.
recite every line. I couldn't do it now, but growing up, I could recite every line. And I would go out on the trampoline in the backyard and just bounce on one side of the trampoline and be Superman, and then bounce on the other side and be the villain or whoever he was talking to, or Lois Lane, and just basically just be doing my own movies out there. And my parents they told me later how they would just sit and look out the window and laugh. I didn't know anyone was ever watching.
Jeff, I think we just became best friends. That's like my number one, hands down. There's something about it, man. It gave me hope, and it wasn't just the storytelling. I mean, he to this day is Superman to me. I know
it was our Avengers, I guess, our Marvel era.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it set the standard. I think that's an important thing too. It's not just it takes your attention, it incites your imagination, which is a creative area, and I think that's an important factor. And I think you touched another point. I always think it comes off as preachy, which people don't like, where people are like, hey, you got to see this in the movie, you got to see this in the theaters, you got to see it. But there's a big difference between listening to an album at home like AC/DC and then seeing them in concert. So
totally different.
I can back that up with Obsession. There's massive difference, like horror and comedy, especially. At the theater, there's just something about being sitting a bunch of other strangers. Can you maybe kind of go on your thoughts on the effects at theater? I mean, home theater is great, but being at the theater is a different experience.
Yeah, I try to go every week if I can. I try to block off some time on Friday during the day to go and see a movie. I'm going this week to see Backrooms.
Oh, yes, that looks great.
Which we're in the competition with, but I don't care. I feel like, I hope they have a great weekend. I hope everybody has a great weekend. I'm really interested in that movie. I hope Kane kills it. I think it's so cool that, he directed that at 19 years old. Now he's 20. So I can't wait to see how that does. But I really saw what you're talking about with Obsession because, I'd seen several of the different cuts of the movie at home because Curry would send it to me and we would talk about it and such. But when he got to the final cut, he wanted to send it to me like a week before TIFF. And I told him I didn't want to see it because I knew at this point he was just making very little changes. It's not something I needed to see. And I wanted to experience it for the first time, the final cut in the theater with people. And he had that coveted Saturday night Midnight Madness spot where The Substance had played the year before. I mean, the TIFF was just, this movie wouldn't be where it is today without TIFF. I mean, the people who put Midnight Madness together. I wish I could remember the gentleman's name, but he really believed in the film, and he was right because it played and it was, I don't know how many people in that theater, 1,500 or so. It's a huge theater, and they laughed at every time it was funny. They screamed every time it was scary. Curry was sitting right next to me and his mom on the other side of him. And we were just elbowing each other the whole time. Like this is working. Like, this is crazy that this is happening. That experience was unreal. And then seeing it at other festivals and in the premiere in LA, one of the things I noticed, like I do the voice of the trivia DJ when they're at and actually, is what I say is pretty interesting because the trivia questions are about genies and Making a Wish and Aladdin and different things, and I heard all that at all the festivals and the premiere and all that, and I was like, oh, cool. And then when I watched the movie in my local theater, it was just
oh no,
because they don't have all the channels.
Yes,
Dolby or whatever.
You guys are missing out.
Yeah, so I was like, oh shoot. But I imagine at home, even if you got the greatest stereo system in the world, you only have so many channels to play stuff on. But it is something about just being around people and everybody like jumping and screaming at the same time. And, especially with horror movies, it's an event. It's like, there's safety in numbers.
Right.
So
Is that guy freaked out as much as me? All right, great, good.
yeah, and I've just seen the videos of people. I saw one today, like of the credits ending, the lights coming on, and there's 30 people sitting in this. They did just still sitting there, like they're not ready to get up and leave yet. To me, that is like a communal experience.
Yes.
You're not going to have that in your living room.
No, not at all. It's totally different. I think, and you kind of seen different things as the film was, different phases of editing and whatnot, or scenes or sequences of scenes. When you got to see the whole thing, for a TIFF or whatnot in person for the first time, did you have like anything that surprised you? Because people don't know, like you're in the middle of making a movie, you're like, okay, we're doing this scene. But when you see everything edited and music at the end, it's a different.
The only thing is that the sound design is just so good, and that was the Curry and Haley Johnson, the producer, and Taylor Clemens. They had flown to New York to an audio company that does like the sound mixing and all that, the sound design, and that was just like blew me away when I heard that, and it takes the film to the next level. But, the cut I saw previously was pretty close to what was in the final cut. But there's a lot of things over the year or so of editing that were taken out that were really awesome. Like one of them is a scene where Nikki's in the car with Bear, and she goes on to a monologue about the difference between love and romance, which is one of the themes of the movie.
Yeah.
She just briefly mentions it in the master cut that we have now. But even though it was a great scene, it had to go because the most important thing is to not lose the audience early with pacing, to get to that inciting incident as quickly as possible. Curry really wanted Bear to break that stick within the first 15 to 17 minutes. So, you have to make you have to do some things you may not want to do to get there and get the pacing up. They reshot the first scene to make some changes, and that made the film better. It is really in its best version right now, even though it's missing stuff. It's definitely in its best version. People, I read online where people are wanting to see some NC-17 cut because they want more of the head smashes and such. The truth is, I can tell you, it's better now with fewer head smashes. Like I'd love to show it to you, and it sounds like it will come out maybe, but you'll see it and you'll be like, oh, well, that was no big deal. Like it's better now. Like it's still pretty brutal.
I mean, it does the job. Let's be honest.
But most people will see that and be like, "That wasn't the NC-17 cut. Are you sure?" Yeah. No,
well, wait for the director's cut. You'll be sad. I feel like that too, because my experience to my first short film is basically about a vintage cursed camera, and I'm taking it through the plot lines of that, and you start going through it. I'm like, okay, this is like 23 minutes. I think you start whittling down, and yes, you start going into that. Hey, as a director, I feel like this is good, but is it really, it's servicing the story, but is it really servicing the pace and story? I think it's, and that's right. You got your script, the writing side of things, the shooting of it, and then your edit can just totally change the whole dynamic. I mean, even with sound, you were just saying too, right? Especially with a horror film. So can you kind of back up, maybe going into that side of things where, as far as getting the pacing down, everything starts on the page, but you got these decisions to make, and you probably, seeing Curry doing all these short films and now his feature film, especially Obsession, going into, okay, yeah, we got to cut something like this out to tell that pace better. You kind of, I don't know, it kind of can't be too precious, I suppose, is what I'm really trying to get at.
Where you have certain landmarks that you need to hit, like the way I've come to really use story structure is, for me, it's more of a looking back tool to sort of grade the script and be like, okay, now that I have this, does it sort of fit this story structure? If not, I can, shave a little here, move stuff around. But I'm not trying to be rigid as I'm writing about like oh, I want this to happen by this page, this to happen by this
Right.
page. I just sort of have a general idea. But one of the things about the short films is, and the mistake that a lot of people make, I think, is that, well, most short films are too long, just because people who are putting these festivals together, they only have so much time, and so they really want to like get as many good films in as possible. So that's one thing. But the other thing, the big mistake I think short films make, and I've been watching a lot of them recently, is that they're not a full story arc. They're not a miniature film. Like a short film to me should be a full film. It should have a beginning, a middle, and end. Each character should have a full arc. It's just you've taken, and that's why they're difficult to do well. You've taken something that takes 90 minutes, and
Right.
shrunk it down to 12, 13 minutes or whatever. But you still want to do that. You don't want to shoot a scene or an idea or a concept. Those may be fun and flashy and you see some cool stuff, but we don't finish satisfied because we're
Right.
conditioned to see a full story when we watch something.
That's a great point because I see that I've experienced myself doing this. I'm like, hey, this feels good, but it feels like it's all plot,
Mm-hmm.
and not strong enough on the story side,
Mm-hmm.
the character side, or whatever. That's a
Yeah.
great point. Yeah, because you do see that, especially, and it shouldn't matter. Like especially these micro shorts, even doing micro short like verticals now, right? Like pumping out a bunch of like, okay, this is about 1 minute, but you could tell the whole story in this little minute. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a long theme. That's an amazing takeaway.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that Curry and Cooper do so beautifully with their sketches it's not just set up, punchline. Every time it's got a turn. Every time it has a misdirection where you go against expectations. And so that's their goal always. That's what Key and Peele did. I'm sure there are other great sketch shows that did that, but we're just like obsessed with Key and Peele. And so that's where, they Curry learned that and Cooper too, I'm sure. So, but that really translates well to horror because it's the same thing. You want to subvert expectations, you want to surprise, you want to set people up, and then you would think it's a payoff, but the payoff's over here.
That's an interesting thing too with any branch of horror and comedy. It's like it's the same kind of effect. We were saying earlier,
Hmm.
like being in an audience watching it together, or like you see the magic trick once on both, and it's like it either it adds more or doesn't hit the same. Or I even heard Robin Williams like when he was winning Oscar for drama piece and things like that. Like
Hmm.
to be a comedian, you kind of have to know the polar opposite of that, and kind of vice versa. It's kind of interesting how those two somewhat mirror each other.
Yeah, that's why you see so many comedians that can really do horror. Bill Hader is
Oh,
in the middle of shooting a horror movie. I can't wait to see what he comes up with. I think it's going to be great, and it is. It's going to be awesome.
I love everything. Barry, that was an amazing show.
Yeah, yeah, and that had some horror elements in it too. Yeah.
Oh, truly. Kind of in closing here, I know one of the projects everybody's excited about moving forward. I know everybody's like, "Hey, you just released a movie. What's your next thing?" It's like, "Hey, I gotta like keep finishing this thing up." But I know Curry's got Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of in the lineup here.
Hmm.
Everybody's excited about that. I know he's excited. Are you going to be attached, like, still with that as far as consulting with the script, or
I don't know. He hasn't asked me yet, so I'm
maybe you'll
hoping
be
so.
in it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to your agent.
Yeah. Uh-huh. He hadn't asked me. I had some part in anything but ghosts as far as like helping out with notes and whatnot. It wasn't quite as involved as with Obsession, but that's because Cooper and Curry co-wrote that together, and they had each other, and they wanted my opinion on things, but I was more of an outside. So, and then with Chainsaw, Curry and I have talked about ideas and stuff, and I've heard some of his ideas. He's asked me about things, but he has not said anything about me being involved with it. It's going to be. It's not like A24 bought it and is distributing it. This is their IP, and it's a studio film for them. So there's going to be, ultimately they're going to let Curry do whatever he wants because that's why they picked him, or they wouldn't have picked him. But there'll be other people with opinions and things. So I don't know if I would be involved. I definitely will be around and offer any sort of services Curry wants, and I'll definitely be on set some because that's just going to be cool.
You're right. Oh yeah. It's a crazy
Yeah.
set.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not your normal Thanksgiving dinner, you know.
that's right. No, I can't wait to see what he does with that. But Anything But Ghosts is next, and it's going to be awesome. It's Bryce Dallas Howard and Aaron Paul and you know, those two are just like for Curry. I wouldn't say he was worried, but he knew like, okay, this is different for me to direct these
That's a good
A-list
point.
actors. And even Violet McGraw, even though she's young, she's so good and so well established in the horror community. But they were pros as you would expect. Like they wanted Curry to direct them. They wanted to, they had ideas about their character as they should, but they wanted to fulfill his vision. And they were there because they trusted him and they wanted to be a part of whatever it was he was making. So it was really a beautiful thing.
That's super exciting. And then for you, kind of closing here, you got so many projects coming up here. What are you most looking forward to? You got like good tape, medium rare directing, directorial debut, things like that.
Yeah.
What do you got? What are you most excited about here?
Well, I'm really excited about those, and I'm working on a couple of writing assignments for producers that I'm really excited about, and another project that I'm involved in. So I just really can't say anything about them, but it's just been great to have work and to have, people validate me and say, hey, we're interested in what you have to say, not just because you're Curry's dad. So I always joke that, I'm a Nepo daddy. Because it's funny. I've seen online where people who don't know anything at all, they see that I'm a screenwriter and they're like, oh, that makes sense. Curry's just a Nepo baby.
Right.
No. Curry brought me to this. If anybody's Nepo, it's me, but really nobody is. We're earning it on our own. I've wanted that for Curry and I to develop our careers separately from each other. And, his team's not my team. He's got a great team around him that protect him and that he trusts. And he couldn't ask for a better situation with his manager and his agents. But yeah, we still collaborate and work together, and we have this dream of doing this movie together down the road. And so that's going to be awesome when that happens.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Methods of Fiction. To hear more insights from filmmaking and entertainment industry professionals, subscribe to our video podcast on YouTube. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to follow us there as well. We look forward to having you join us again on the next episode.